Welcome, Coleman Report Live, late May edition, pre-Memorial Day edition. Special guest, Chuck Evans, President, Capital Growth Solutions. Chuck, thank you for joining us. You're here to plug America West.
America West is our next conference coming up outside of Palm Springs, California, June 11th through the 13th. And this conference is education-oriented. There'll be 90-minute sessions. So if you haven't registered, please do. It was a successful last year, and we're going to have much more success this year.
Good for you. You guys do a great job on that. Nothing wrong with Palm Springs in June, that's for sure.
I'm jealous.
With all the bad weather we're having throughout the country. Hey, tell everyone what you do.
I am a SBA lender service provider, so we help banks process, close, and service SBA loans. We also help them dig their way out of issues. Many times banks, because of the shortage of staff, fall into disrepair with the SBA, and they look for people like us to help them. So
Awesome.
We want to help you with lessons learned every week or every other week, and some good webinars that we're going to offer here soon. One of them is going to be developing a strategy around SBA lending, where we'll talk about the people, the plan, the process. Another good one is going to be franchise lending for community banks. So stay tuned, folks.
Very good, Chuck. Well, I thank you for joining us. I know you're going to stick around and help us be part of the panel and answer some questions. Hey, yesterday we did a cool webinar on hospitality financing, the 11th year we've done this. Lance, we did this back in 2008, 2009, where there was no hospitality financing. You know, we forget how bad those times were. But what do you think? This is, what do you think a hotel owner operator's most pressing concern is in 2019? The $50 living wage, Airbnb, concerns of recession, online travel agency, or new construction supply will outpace demand. Go ahead, Lance.
Usually, Bob, on a question, there is a correct answer, but this is one of those that you needed another category that says all of the above.
Yeah.
No, I did that on purpose because I wanted to see what people think. Actually, our expert yesterday, he's with 10X, an online auction company. He said the number one concern, in his opinion, is the $15 living wage. He said labor costs are outstripping revenue growth. And but he said, you were right, Lance, all of these are a concern. And the point of this is we'll get to a footprint. The point is hotel financing is not generic throughout the country. You need to understand the footprint.
Well, Bob, it's just like when we did the restaurant series and we talked about how restaurants would respond to delivery services and various other forms of electronic ordering and collecting of meals. Same thing here. There are a lot of competitive factors. The Airbnb is a big one to me because they're cutting away at the revenue.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, all of these are concerns. So,
and while I'm highly supportive of a higher minimum wage, it does not mean that that won't have a negative impact on a lot of industries that we lend money in, restaurants, hotels.
What he's saying, his data is showing him that increase in labor cost is not being offset by increase in revenues. And so therefore, that's going to compress your margins. Let's go to the next question. We have 5 brothers. They own 5 hotels. Each owns 84%. And so each one owns 84% of the hotel. Then the other brothers own a minority 4% share. Can they lend or approve 5 separate SBA $3 million or 504 loans with this structure?
A very tricky question, Bob.
It is, and the answer is no. This is a case study. What SBA found out, actually Congress got involved and found out that one brother actually controlled everything, and then he got his other brothers to come in as 84% owners, but he controlled the entire transaction. Therefore, by definition, they were affiliates, and the guarantees were ineligible. So be careful when you're doing these type of structures. You need to understand who the affiliates are and who those minority shareholders are and why they're involved.
Well, and Bob, it begs the question for the participant lender. If you're in hotel lending, you need to just ask the borrower, how many other projects do you have ownership in, even if you have 1%, because it's problematic for a participant lender when you don't properly vet out those affiliates, because you may have an ineligible loan at the end of the day.
By definition, this is not, these are all ineligible loans. We're not going to go to the third poll question, so we're going to pass that, Joseph. Let's go to the heat map. Now, this is pretty cool. This is all throughout the country. Green is good, red is bad. And this is how this Strategic Insights views each individual marketplace footprint. Now, it doesn't mean in your Las Vegas that you can't do a transaction. All it means is take a step back and understand how that project fits in. What I love about this is Miami for years was red, and now Miami is one of the best places. Florida, Southeast is one of the best places to do financing. Chuck?
Nashville, look at that. That's good.
So anyway, that's we always do this every year. We'll publish that. I think you can download it as well. You can go to their website. They're pretty cool. But this just helps the underwriter figure out what's going on. We also do statistics, and here are the stats, and this is why we love hotel lending and we love franchises. These are the charge-off stats for the last 10 years. And as you can see, very minimal. And when we say 0.95%, that's over 10 years. That's not 0.95% a year. So my math is right. It's 0.09 a year. So we love the days in. So we love all these brands. So it's always a fun webinar, and just give you a little highlight of that. And those
I got to be honest with you, Bob. I'm blown away by the performance of that list of hotels, because it's you would not have told me that a Red Roof Inn on the previous slide would have had a 0% charge-off rate.
Yeah, and we talked a lot about mom and pop. Don't shy away from mom and pop operators. But franchises do well, but you need to underwrite the franchise. You need to understand all these other rules. Very nice lending. The only problem is, if you look in the column 3 from the right, is we have very large payoff numbers. So when you book these loans, you're not going to get a long-term asset. What 1/3 of all loans made in the last 10 years have already paid off. So they're being taken out by other lenders. So that's the other side of the coin. You're not going to have charge-offs, but you may have early payoffs. And what you think maybe in your portfolio for a while will go away. Takeaway on that is take care of your customers and maintain strong servicing and maintain strong relationships.
Well, Bob, also consider interest rate structures that are not floating on a monthly or quarterly basis.
Yeah,
a lot of the payoffs occur because it's a big dollar loan, and we've had several upticks in the interest rate. So some of those hotel operators got their loans re-amortized and said, oh, wait a second, our payment's $2,000 a month more than it used to be.
Let's go to, we have a bunch of questions. Thank you very much for that. Here's from Chuck. We had a request from a lender who received a full denial of guaranteed purchase from the SBA. It was because they did not have a CAVRS in file, and the underwriting was insufficient for a startup business. It did not meet the minimum 1.15 DCR. We're going to contest this based upon pulling a CAVRS today, and it's not showing any loss, and the underwriting was based upon a prior SOP. Anyway, what are our chances on this, Chuck? What are you going to tell Chuck?
Well, you pull CAVRS, and if it's clean, you're okay there. You have to go back and look at what SOP did you underwrite this with, and what was your policy on conventional lending. You know, if you did some add backs that the SBA disagrees with, but that's in your policy, you have a good argument. So this can go from a full denial to possibly a repair. What do you think, Lance?
Well, Chuck's right on point. One of the challenges you have when SBA denies, they're going to deny based on the current SOP frequently. And you have to be willing to go back. And the 5010, Bob, how many times, we've had 4 versions in the last 2 years, it seems like. So you have to make sure and go back and look at the origination date of the loan, find out what SBA SOP 5010 was in place at that time. And for instance, on the debt service coverage ratio, the 1.15 has been a standard, but there have been some changes in how you calculate it. So it's important to understand that you go back and look at the SOP that was in effect at the time the loan originated.
Also,
It's the real
remember,
lesson learned.
the SOP is silent on how you calculate that debt coverage ratio. You can base it on tax returns. You can base it on financials. You can base it on projections. This is a startup. You could have based it on projections if the underwriter properly underwrites the projections. And I suspect that may be an issue in there. Anyway.
Well, one thing, Bob, that happens too is SBA will question add backs. But you go to prudent lending standards. If you'd add it back on a similar size non-SBA loan, typically you can add it back on an SBA loan.
The takeaway for me, guys, is that the code on this is the lender just ignored something. And so I don't think they were criticized, actually for the add backs, they were criticized because the underwriting was, quote, insufficient. And that's where you get yourself in trouble, where you're not, I'm assuming here that maybe there were projections and the underwriter didn't underwrite the projections.
This CAVRs issue, Bob, is very important to note. You're supposed to run CAVRs prior to doing the deal.
But
if you wake up 6 months, a year, 5 years down the road and realize you don't have a CAVRs report in your file, run it. Now, there is a risk, Bob. You may get a negative CAVRs report, but
what's that full denial?
But SBA is not going to question you as long as you have if you've got a clean CAVRs report in file, and again, you're supposed to run it before you close the deal in the underwriting process. But if you didn't, run it, stick it in your file.
Let's get to this next question, which is a great question from Philip, who attended the webinar yesterday. And he says, what we want to do is we want to have an escrow account to reserve for future furniture, fixtures, equipment, rehab down the line. Lance, what do you think?
Well, and I understand the need because hotels, 5 years, 10 years down the road, the flag's going to come in and say, hey, guys, you've got to update. You've got to add a coffee bar. You've got to put new mattresses in. So I understand the desire, but SBA's SOP 5010 5H, I always have to remember if I'm getting the letter right. SBA's SOP 5010 talks about escrow accounts. The only thing it really talks about is escrowing for insurance and taxes. And there are some specific rules in how you manage. For instance, it has to be in an FDIC insured account, has to pay an interest rate similar to what you'd pay on other escrow accounts. And there's some other thing in the 5010 about escrow account. It doesn't say anything about maintenance, furniture, fixtures, and equipment. And when the SBA goes silent, you fall back to prudent lending practices. Are you requiring this on similar size, similar industry, non-SBA loans? Now, my overall impression on this, Bob, is I wouldn't do it. I don't know that it's going to be okay with SBA. And again, if you do decide to do it, make sure you study the 5010 portion on escrow accounts and follow those rules specifically. But just to sum it up, Bob, the SOP talks about escrowing for insurance and taxes, not for maintenance and updates. You can do a loan down the road for that.
I think you are absolutely correct that if you're doing this on your conventional lending, then SBA then you've established that's your prudent practice, then SBA is going to allow this subject to the terms of the escrow account. The problem is, and Chuck, I'll let you wave in here. The problem is, as I recall, the wording on that says that whatever's left over at the end of the year, you have to refund back to the borrower. So I don't know how that plays into this.
That's where the problems come in on the 5010 rules. At the end of the year, you pay the bills, and you're supposed to refund any amount above a certain percentage. And so if they did this escrow account, they'd be refunding money every year.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chuck.
It's not best practice, I don't think.
Okay. Well, very good. Well, Philip, we appreciate the question. That may not have been the answer you wanted, but that's how we waved in. Hey, running out of time, but I got a bunch more news. Number one, we have a new 1050 that came out yesterday. We got the notice, and we will publish this next week. It's not effective till July 1. I just want to let you know a new settlement sheet is in effect.
And Bob,
go ahead, Lance.
I got a loan closing tomorrow, and we're using the new 5010, or we're using the new 1050.
Oh,
Very good.
Very good. Very good. What about your shop, Chuck?
Absolutely. We're started on it already.
Hey, I was quoted this morning in the New York Post, our data. There's a senator from Nevada who's going through, I apologize. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. It's Catherine Masto. I apologize for that. Anyway, what she's concerned about is that subways have a higher default than industry averages. There's a lot of unrest in the subway franchisees, and the brand, I don't think we all agree, is not doing a good job taking care of their owner operators. She wants, therefore, all these franchises to disclose the losses for the past 3 years. Well, that doesn't make any sense because the losses are already publicized. They're already up on the website. The other thing that I take issue with is she's going after the brand, and I think she has some legitimate criticism. But remember, these are owner-operators. These are small business owners. Anyway, I don't know what you guys think about that.
Well, Bob, on a loan like this, and I love the statistics provided in the NAICS report that Coleman puts out, but you don't want to paint, Chuck and I talked about this on the phone the other day, you don't want to paint yourself in the corner by saying, I will not do one above a certain default rate, because there are always mitigating circumstances. Yes. You know, Bob Coleman is doing a subway and he's got 800,000, you know, he's got tremendous financial strength and it's just something he wants to do. Well, you're going to go ahead and do that loan. I guess the point is it's hard to compare a default rate of a Subway to a Burger King, in my opinion, but it's important information to have. For instance, if the default rate was 20%, you better tell me some mitigating circumstances to do the loan. So I agree. Some franchises are more difficult to make a go of, but they're small business owners. They're taking risks.
They have the right to sell it. And if you're going to go after and be punitive on the brand, and I think the article says there were 700 arbitration actions filed by the owners and whatever.
Well,
and that's going to be negatively impact Main Street small business owners. That's my position.
And a more appropriate track for this, Bob, SBA has people who review franchise agreements on a daily basis. Let SBA review it and put things in place. You know, out on the franchise list on the far right side, many people never see the comments. Let SBA review it, and if they don't agree with how Subway, the franchisor, is operating, they can make some changes.
They can just say they're ineligible. Go ahead, Chuck.
Hopefully they don't want to discourage franchise lending, and this sort of smells like that. You know, I would encourage better underwriting, but don't discourage franchise lending, and that's what this
I don't know where. I mean, there's this movement on penalizing the small business owner because they don't like the practices of a McDonald's or a Subway, and so they're saying we need to raise wages, et cetera, and et cetera. Yeah. But anyway, that's a conversation we will continue to have. CPR report, please get that over to your CFO. It's pretty good information. We published that yesterday, I believe. And here we talked about those prepayment speeds. Remember, I talked earlier in that column, I paid in full. That's called a prepayment for this. So prepayment is not a default. It's either could be default, or it's a paid in full on a refinancing. And this is very important for the secondary market to determine what is the outlook for 2019. And for those of you who were watching last week, we had the boys on and they were talking about this. So that's their report, and we published that for them. This is interesting article we published Monday. We said 50% of all small business owners are baby boomers. I would have lost that bet.
Yeah. I would have too, Bob. And what that tells me is there's going to be a huge turnover in small
acquisitions. How many are being sold by the baby boomers today? I think a good many.
Right.
Business acquisition loans will be hot going in the future if this statistic is true.
Yeah, and also, now this is very much in the weeds, but they changed the rules, so now we can actually lend to ESOPs. So there could be some creative ways that you can go about this. Let's see, we talked about America West. Chuck, I assume we can still register for that?
You can, absolutely. So please do. We have a couple really good conferences coming up. America West, Great Lakes. Music City in Nashville is one of my favorite. Flagel.
And what is your involvement? You're on the board of a lot of these. You're in the board of several of these.
As a vendor, I feel it's important that education in this industry needs to continue. And that continues with Coleman, with the Preston Group, with Nagel, NADCO.
Yeah.
So these are great venues for lenders that do 5-6 loans a year and can't afford to fly all over the country to go to a conference. So it's
just as you get the participation for listening to these webinars and you download the certificate, document going to these events, document that and put that in your file so you have a nice chronological log of, hey, this is what I am doing and my staff is doing for training. You turn that over to your auditors, to SBA, et cetera, et cetera. We have a couple webinars coming up. Lance is doing, there we go. I'm doing preparing the credit memo, and then Lance is going to do update on, and I do the credit memo for over 350,000 and under 350 and talk about the two differences that you can do. And then we talk about compliance in the, we're going to do a portfolio. Question, Chuck, when are any of these coming to the Seattle area?
Hopefully next year. With America West Conference, we're looking at Seattle as a possibility for moving the conference.
Okay,
yes.
Very good. Maybe
So
whoever asked this,
now on June 11th, we'll have a date.
Yeah, whoever asked this question, send an email directly to Chuck or send it to me and I'll get it over to Chuck. And with that, thank you all very much. Have a nice Memorial Day. And I will talk to you all on Thursday.
Have a great weekend.
Take care, folks.